Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick at Qdabra. Well, welcome to this week's webinar. Today, we're talking about how to use CSS to make your forms look gorgeous. And I have with me one of our customers, Shane Harvey. He's been a customer for quite a long time, and we're really happy. I'm really happy to have him here to assist me in the demos today. He'll be answering some questions and doing another short demo after I do the main one. And I also have our esteemed web designer extraordinaire, Mel Clemente, with us, who has actually prepared what you're going to see today. We have done this webinar in different forms and shapes before. This is not the first time we're talking about beautifying your forms, but it is a little bit different from before. We've made some improvements in the technique to reduce the amount of hassle factor. It was never a huge hassle, but we've actually made it even better. So if you remember last September, we actually had the beautifying or making your forms look good, and we did it again about this time last year. We've got better techniques now. We're going to show you, and Mel's going to make a few comments on how we were able to do that to make it easier for you. So I want to also thank, we have 11 attendees today. We're probably going to have a short audience, but a lot of familiar faces. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to actually do a quick poll to get started, just kind of warm us up here mentally. How do we currently make your forms look good? And this is a multiple choice, so you can choose more than one option here. And we'll do a quick, we'll get some quick feedback from you. Hopefully you can see the poll up there. And just check on one of those boxes, or two if you want, or three. And I will let people know. It looks like we've got people choosing the first and the second. So our goal today really is to reduce the amount of time it takes you to make your forms look good, and also show you some techniques to make them look good that you can't do today easily. So it looks like we have everyone choosing number one, and about 89% of you are choosing number two, and then number four is 22%, and number three, the export source files, is, wow, you got 11%, but at least two of you are doing that. That's kind of crazy. So I'm going to quickly close this poll, and we're going to continue with the webinar. So the webinar today is short, 20 minutes. We're taping it. We'll go on YouTube. And our goal here today is to show you how to define a theme, a color scheme, or what we want to call it, for your different components of your form, your title text, buttons, table, headers, and then also to show you how you can automatically fit the form. So I'm going to jump, automatically fit the form to the device size. So if you've got a small device, you don't necessarily have as much screen real estate, you want to maximize the usage. It's kind of counterintuitive, but if you do have a small device, then you actually do want to maximize the view so that you get all the pixels. Anyway, here's the reasons why we're doing this today. It's pretty obvious. If for those of you who were doing manual changes before, opening up the XSLT, there was two of you, I think, that said yes to that question. We don't have to do that anymore. So that's the good news. And one style is good, consistent across all your forms. I misspelled you here, or your. But anyway, those are the reasons. So let's quickly jump into the demo. Oh, first, we have an important announcement. We have a bug alert from last week. I want to thank Misty. I don't think she's on the call today, but Misty, one of our heavy forms viewer users in Mississippi, she discovered this last week, and I want to thank her for bringing this to our attention. If you're using a button and you're using that update form action, Forms Viewer does not support it. Once again, Forms Viewer is the app that you use for your InfoPath forms now that InfoPath has been discontinued. We've got quite a few people using it. It's getting better and better. I'll talk more about it at the end of the call. But we have this bug with Forms Viewer where if you're using this update action, and some of you may not be using this because this is a little bit esoteric, but Forms Viewer will fail to open. The quick fix is just remove the button or hide it because we don't support it anyway. We don't support the update form action, which is a list form thing. And Misty, thank you for being here. I'm glad that you're here. So thank you to Misty for bringing this up. We did fix this quickly by just removing the button. It actually it wasn't an issue when the form opened initially because that button had been hidden. So we're going to fix this again in April for good. In other words, Form 0 will be able to process it without causing any problem. So that's a quick update. Don't use update form action, or if you do, you want to hide it. So here's a typical form. We actually demoed this form last week. Let me show you what this looks like in the designer. So I've got a form created last week for my meeting tracker. Pretty plain Jane form here. I've got a hidden section at the top describing what we're doing. The form has essentially 3 sections. The week that we're doing our weekly meeting, because this is a weekly meeting form, the news for the week, and the individual focus for the people on the team. And here you can see it's a repeating table. So it's a pretty simple form. Let's take a look at this in Forms Viewer. I've got the CSS off version, and I can send the link to those of you who want to try this on their cell phones. But we're going to open up this plain Jane version, and notice that it looks like it does in the designer. It's not really anything extraordinary. There's no you can see if I go too small, it doesn't wrap. It just looks like you would expect. Let's take a look at the version with the CSS, and then we'll show you how we did it. So this version loads the CSS resource on load, and you can see that we've snazzed it up quite a bit. The only difference between these two forms is the second one loads this resource. So in other words, we're able to change the font for the top, we're able to change the color of the headers for the table, we're able to make these buttons round, and make this whole thing responsive so that I can actually, it's going to use up my entire screen real estate no matter what I'm on, if I'm on a mobile device or if I'm on a desktop device, and more importantly, it's going to detect when you open the form that's happening. So, so this simple form, we have a team meeting. Typically, our team meetings start at about this time every morning on Tuesdays of the week. And let's just say that today's event, the news for today. What's the news for today? I don't know. I haven't watched it. I'm not going to watch the news. I'm fed up with the news. But seriously, we have weekly webinar, and there is news. We fixed the annoying update form bug, or we worked around it. And then down here, you would just put in your name and your focus for the week. I think there's a bug here because it's not supposed to be down there. So I've got a bug in my form. So if I wanted to fix that, I'd go in here and I would just fix this by changing this to be the task text, which is what it should be. And I'll just show you that this is actually live. So I'll just change this quickly to a text control. And we'll save this out. And I'm going to update it. And we'll show you this is really live because I didn't discover that bug when I was demoing this morning to myself. I wasn't paying attention. So when you upload a form to Forms Viewer, you're just going to double click it. It's quite easy process to update these things. So we have this anonymous link too. You can actually, I'm going to put this in the chat window. For those of you who want to take a look at this on your device, you can just open up that link on your desktop, or you can send the link to your smartphone, and it will show the form even though you're not logged in. So now we have a caching. It looks like we might have a caching issue here. Sometimes when you update these, you need to refresh them. And it looks like I've got an issue with my cache. So I did this correctly, right? CSS. What did I do wrong, Mel? Saved it out. Did I save it correctly? Save as. Beautiful CSS. That's good. Went over here and I selected the right one, hopefully. And open the form. And it should show us that text box. I know what the issue is. The issue is that I was on the wrong view. So I updated it for the mobile view only. But you can see that I just did fix that issue with the form. So now I can actually enter in my focus for the week do the webinar, work on bugs, whatever. Okay, so this is our form. We also have these little cool buttons over here on the right that allow you to subtract or add items. So I want to go back to my deck real quick and just talk about this. So we modify the CSS, and the idea behind this is that you create one style sheet, one CSS. That's a cascading style sheet is what CSS refers to. So this CSS is a web-based technology. So you create one CSS for your entire org. Whether you like the pink or you like the red, you figure out your style. And that CSS file is really simple. Here it is. So we have a section here for the table. We have a section here for columns, and you can change anything. So you can see that we have some comments in here. Here's where the buttons are being customized using these different HTML attributes. And so Mel is going to talk briefly. Mel, do you want to tell people how you go ahead and change? I mean, if it's just the button RGB values, it's right here. But if it's the other RGB values, where do you change those?
Yeah, for the form title, for example, our color there, down there in the form title, it says color, and then the what do you call that? The value for the pixel, right? Forgot the term for
the
it.
Hex value, or is it
the hex? Yeah, the hex value. Yeah, there you go. So I normally go to the browser and do an inspect. You know, if you right click anywhere in the browser, you have an option to inspect, and just to kind of play around with the color kind of theming I want before I actually modify that CSS file. So for example, I want to change the colors for the weak headers there, the news and the focus. I'd let's see. So you right click right there where that bar is and inspect, and it's gonna point you to the correct tag in the HTML. And if you go to TD class XD heading cell in the inspector, you want me to demo?
Yeah, I'll make you the presenter. Sorry, I should have done that to begin with.
Yeah.
You're on.
Great, thank you. Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet. There you go. Yep, we can see now.
Okay, so now if I right click here and inspect, it's gonna take me to that element in the HTML, and I can click on here just because I know that that's where my custom stuff are. And I'm going to look here in the right. Let's see if that's where it is. It's the heading row. I'm not seeing that in here. Just give me a second. So these CSS files can get really tricky. Let me look for where I'm doing that. Try this one. Okay. I'm actually going to do a refresh. It's not seeing things. The inspector is acting weird here. And I actually want to show you creating this from scratch for a blank template. So hopefully that would give people more idea. I'm not seeing it. That's weird. It's the heading row. So if I just want to add a new one, maybe. So if I add here in the inspector, click this add button, it's going to add a new style rule. And let me just go here, and it's actually heading cell 2. If I add this one right here for the background color and change it on the fly, like right here, I'd add that, and I can change this, pick another color maybe. It's not doing it. So it could be wrong. Just bear with me a little.
You know, it's a demo when we have pauses.
Yeah, trying to
It's
find
live with
on
no,
it.
no smoke and mirrors here, folks. We are actually. I think the cool thing here with the Chrome is that you actually have this inspector, and we've done this before. We talked about how to inspect and find the HTML values. So this is a really clever technique that Mel's got when it works, and it usually does. So I'm not sure why it's not working today, Mel, but do you want to just continue on because we want to switch to Shane? Actually, maybe we can switch to Shane and then come back to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that will be better.
Okay.
Thank
First,
you.
I'm going to switch back to me, and then I'm going to share out my my screen here because I think I have a slide deck, Shane, on demo 2. So Shane's got 2 forms, and we're going to take a look at both of these because Shane's using the same technique in his forms. And Shane, we've got this question, we've got a slide up after these to answer some questions from you. But I think first off, we'll switch to you and just have you talk about how you found this process to be, because you've gone through this already, and you can give people kind of the, you know, not the unedited version. Shane, you there?
I am, yep. I'm trying to get the share up. Give me just a second. So if you can, let me know when you can see everything.
Yep.
Okay. So what I actually did, Patrick, to prepare, I figured it would be neat to show swapping the one form, the style sheet in between. I've got both the style sheets that Mel created for me in this form, and I can just switch a rule and kind of show what that looks like. So what I wanted to do, and I asked Mel for help on this, is what I wanted to do was I have 2 different kind of instances of forms. There's forms that we use that our clients need to give us information on, and then forms that we use internally as part of our business. And I wanted to really easily be able to distinguish when you open up the form, whether it's a form that a client's going to see or a form that's just internal for our business. And so I had different styles that I was using, but I wasn't using the CSS. So every time that I had to go and create a new form, I'd have to copy the form that I had previously, then go in and update each header and update each button and just add in change all of the colors. I have a notebook that has all of the RGB values for all of the forms that I had, and it would take forever to do that. And in seeing some previous webinars where you had demonstrated this technique, I reached out and Mel helped me out. So I'll show you an example of the form that we use that's a client-facing form, and it's loading up one of the style sheets that Mel had created. And you'll see that there's rounded buttons, and you'll see this is kind of in between me working on it because there's picture buttons that'll pop up here that I use to, and some of the colors are different. But it's got the dynamic opening and closing, and that was really important for me because our clients use all kinds of different computers. We don't have anybody that uses a phone at all, but we have, through the company that we work for, they're only allowed to use a certain type of computer, but some of them may have higher resolution or some of them may be smaller resolution, and I wanted it to be able to open properly on each of the form, or on each of the devices. And so I can show you that it's a real basic form, and what's really great about it now is I can just go in and start from scratch and create any form and not have to go through and do each section and do the formatting for each section. And it took me forever to do that, where now I can just use the CSS file. We actually have, so I loaded up both the internal and the external. And what I'll do is I can enable the internal one and disable the external one, save it, and then upload it into Forms Viewer. And here's where you'll kind of see me doing style sheet on top of all the formatting that I already put in, because the buttons are different colors. And when I go in and I add in the expansion, you'll really see buttons overlaying table headers, and this we haven't updated yet, but the buttons, just that quick, it was able to switch from the blue form that I know looking at it right away as an external form to an internal form like this, which is more brown scale. That's been really, super helpful.
It's really clever. You know what you could do, and this is I didn't realize you were using it this way, but you could actually get the input parameter to see if it was being opened anonymously from external sources, right? And you could use that to switch the rule, right? To show it in blue, and that way everyone internally, when they're opening it from the internal link, the form would be the same for both external and internal, but based on that input parameter, it would switch between the CSS, right?
Yep.
Cool.
That's right.
Is that how you're doing it? I didn't quite see the rules there, Shane. Is it?
Well, actually, I'm using two different forms. So it's like internal for everybody in our company. They don't use the external forms. The external users that submit stuff to us, they go through SharePoint and they use their own forms a certain way, and we've got them completely separated out. But for designing, it's going to be fantastic, because then I can, like I say, I don't even need to worry about formatting the whole thing. I've got tons of picture icons that I've used and had to format to different colors just to get them to match the formatting that I've had. Won't need to do that anymore. I don't need to worry about going down and mistyping hex values or any of that stuff, because it's all going to be through the CSS, and that's going to be super helpful.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for being here today. I'm going to we got a couple quick questions for you. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to switch back to my slide here. And so we get the real world forms. So Shane, I guess the question to you, my forms viewer, when did you start using it? You want to go through these real quick for folks?
Yeah, so I actually think I got on Forms Viewer as part of the beta, or right around initial release of Forms Viewer. And part of it was because when I first started working on forms, I had a lot of kind of pie in the sky ideas of what I wanted my forms to do, and I used some pretty advanced techniques. And we had hired somebody previously to code it out for us, and it was a huge hassle. And when I had heard about Forms Viewer and the ability that it had, and we were so tightly tied to the coding that we had put in the forms, that updating things was just ridiculous. So that's why I switched over to Forms Viewer, and part of it was having Q rules built right into it, which I love using and use it quite extensively. Just a lot of the benefits that Forms Viewer had even back then, before you rolled out a bunch of other stuff, that's why I started using it right away.
Cool. Cool.
And it's been great. I mean, you guys have been really responsive to whenever I have any concerns or questions on it. I like the new features that continue to get rolled out. Everything's been great with it.
Well, thank you so much. And we are committed to continuing to make it better, more performant. I have a typo here in the designer. We have data connections editing in the designer now coming in 3.1. That's April. Thanks a lot, Shane, for being here today. I really appreciate you doing this. And I'm going to switch back to Mel. Mel, are you ready to show people how to inspect this? Cool.
Yeah. So here goes. Hope you can see my screen now. So I selected this news. I can hear myself a little bit. So I selected this news header, and it's right here, the class XD heading cell. And on the right here for the styles, you can see that the background color is set to that kind of maroon color. But if I click on that and use my picker and select a different color, for example, something like that. So it's going to try and catch that color, or I can pick from here to change, just to dynamically change it, see how it looks on the fly there. And if I'm happy with that, I can just copy this hex value, go to my CSS file and modify the XD heading cell right there, just something like that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right.
That's awesome.
And yeah. So that works the same with the
so the table headers. I can see those changing on the fly there from the red to the brown. Yeah, oh, there it goes black now. That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
It goes the same with the buttons here. If I select that in my inspector, it points me to my styles for that buttons, and right here you can see that this is the custom that I'm using, and it's pointing to the beautiful.css file. So same goes, I can change my colors, the button color, and that works hand in hand with the border because there's a rounded cornered buttons like so. Right, and what else can we do there? The borders, the rounded borders, it's going to be right here. So if I disable that, I can uncheck stuff there.
I noticed that it updates to close up in the top right at the same time. So you're updating both buttons in the same. That's
all of
awesome.
the buttons in the view, basically. So that's that, and I can also modify my header right there, and it's using the H1 class, so I can change my spacing. For example, I want it more spaced, right? I can do 8 or something obvious right there.
Very cool. So then the way you did this is you right-click it in Chrome. It only works in Chrome, right? You have to have.
Also, yeah. You can also do it in IE. There's also the inspect object or something like that.
So you go in Chrome. It's just right-click, inspect. You right-click the area that you want to look at, and then you hit inspect, and then you're going to see this pop up either on the bottom or on the right, and then you're going to go in and you're going to inspect it, and then show them how you change it. So you go in, you hit inspect, and then you come in and you click on the color value.
Yeah, you pick another color that you want, copy the hex value. You can also do RGB if you want. If you toggle up and down here, it changes to RGB, HSL, what have you. So you can copy these values, right? So if you click away from that, it's gonna update right here, and you can copy this thing and paste it on your CSS file. So I'm gonna actually.
Does it have to be X or RGB, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whatever you want.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And can you show them real quick in the designer? I was going to show them. I'll just show them on my screen. But
I want to show them doing it from scratch, actually.
Oh, okay, hold on. You're so excited to demo this stuff.
I want people to learn. So here's a blank template, a really blank template right there. And if I click up there in the title, we'll see in the font style set it's by default set the title. And so I'm going to just call this webinar demo, and I'm going to insert from here and insert. There are stock tables that I can use, and I'm going to pick anything that has a heading, and I know that my CSS file will take that. So this is going to be my first heading, and I'm just going to toss some text boxes in here real quick for you. So something like that, and I'm going to also add just a button and just add something like a label. I'm going to also add a repeating table for you, just so you can see if things updating later. Remove that and try it again here. So there's my repeating table, and what else? So that's very basic, as in you cannot see any custom change at all. But if I go to my Qdabra rules, because this blank template I already injected with Q rules in Forms Viewer, and I'm going to say load CSS or something like that. And I'm going to actually first add my beautiful.css file as a resource file here. And it's right here. So I know that file's name, and so I can set my QRules command to onload, load that CSS file if InfoPath will participate, will cooperate. There you go. So set the command to load resource. Name would be beautiful. .css, and that's all there is to it. I'm going to save this form as my, just going to call it the same name, my form there. And if I go to where I published it previously, I'm very creative with naming. I'm just calling it blank form. So let's see if things are going to work my way here. Hopefully. There we go.
That was so fast.
So from a very plain Jane, I don't have to style it on the, in the designer there. I just know it's going to take my theme.
Yeah, that's cool.
Automatically in First
That's very cool. So I'll make this sample available to folks who are on the call. So thank you so much, Mel. This is really awesome. And one other thing I wanted to just briefly mention is that if you go back to update templates, go back to that form, click on design. You can actually add the Q rules to your forms from FormsViewer now. So if you click on, I believe it is rule, what is it? It's I forget where it is, but if you haven't added already, you'll see the Q rules inject button. She's got it already in this form, but normally you'd see a button over here to inject Q rules. So you don't need Q rules installed locally to inject it into your forms. You can actually use FormsViewer to do that. Okay, so I'm going to switch back. I think we're almost done. I just want to make a few more comments if people are still with me here. We're going to share out and go back to the slides. So I want to thank Shane and Mel again for wonderful demos. Does anyone have any questions for Shane or for Mel or for me? Now's a good time to throw those questions. There's a question area in webinar. You should be able to ask a question. We'll wait a second. While I'm waiting for questions from you, once again, why are we talking about FormsViewer? Well, it's the only migration path for InfoPath today, and that means it's the lowest cost solution to keep your investment alive, but it's got much more than just the insurance policy. Faster browser experience, we don't do any server-side postbacks, drag and drop to preview and publish, very fast. And we continue to add lots of new features, including the CSS stuff that we demoed today, but also connections to these new JSON-based web services. We're adding designer features so that if the InfoPath designer stops working in a few months, we're going to have your back, and more. So there's tons of stuff going in. We're committed to making it an option for you, a low-cost option that will get better and better in the future. And we actually have training coming up at the end of this month. You can go to our website and click on education. This is what we did in October. Our agenda for March, the end of March, and for May is going to basically look back at the last 6 months of our webinars, and we're going to cherry pick the most interesting demos we did. Two-factor authentication, the DocuSign integration, the face recognition, whatever it is. We've done a lot of cool stuff in the last 6 months. We're going to show you how to add that stuff to your form, signature controls, all that stuff. So I hope you can make it. There are 2 classes. There's the March 27th one, and then there's going to be the first week in May. If you go up to our website, you'll see those. So it doesn't look like we have any questions. And I know we've gone a little bit over today, so I want to thank everyone for joining. And hope you guys all have a great day. Talk to you next week.
Bye, everyone.